sir, thank you so much for talking to Digital Terminal.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to interview you at this great platform. So, your first reaction about Oracle World Tour?
Well, I mean, this is a fantastic venue, a lot of energy. I think
Right.
it's really awesome to hear. This is my first world tour, if you will, outside of the one that happens in
Okay.
US.
Right.
It's fantastic. The energy and the innovation, I think, is really high here. There's
Right.
lots of IT transformation type conversations, and I think that there are also challenges that are big for customers here. So I think looking forward to partnering with a bunch of customers and partners here.
Great. So, means such kind of platform also empower your customers as well as people like us who would love to know about what the solution you are bringing and what are the current status of the market size. So moving forward, so how has Oracle transformed its business with the increased adoption of cloud-based services, particularly in sectors like healthcare, banking, and the public sector? How do you see?
Yeah, look, I think Oracle has transformed itself as a cloud-first company in many ways, right? So our focus is entirely on the cloud, and I think as I mentioned during the keynote, um, we have I think, fairly unique unified cloud strategy that combines apps, your enterprise apps such as ERP or HCM that are focused on business functions and industries, right? Like the medical one is a big one. Larry talks about it repeatedly, right? Like in many different avenues, a huge strategic avenue for us. But I think the big thing there is that, I think there's a real value for customers when you actually cohesively integrate both, right? Like, so, I'm personally involved in some of the conversation internally with like our medical group, if you will, around pulling together the value prop from an infrastructure standpoint and the industry vertical, medical or whatever else there may be, closer together, right? So, how do we actually bring the distributed cloud strategy that OCI has? How do we make that benefit for apps customer, right? And that's a huge play. How do we how do we bring various OCI services to bear in the context of apps, right? The integration pieces, and then the security and compliance perimeter, where you actually like encompass the whole portfolio, and then take that to the customer, right? And I think in all ways, I think the unified cloud strategy, I think, is very unique, and that's one of the ways by which we are reaching out to the customers, hard to move my workloads, if you will.
Right. So generative AI, we all are talking about this. Recently you guys have already launched certain solutions on generative AI.
Yeah.
So how has been the response so far? And if you can share something about the solutions, what they are exactly doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think generative AI is a huge area, right? Like, it's a very exciting area. I think we it's aligned with our unified cloud strategy, where we start we have innovations at every layer, right? At the infrastructure layer, at the OCI level layer, we have GPUs, we have superclusters, which is extremely popular with our customers, and we deliver massive price performance advantages using our GPUs and superclusters. The thing to keep in mind about this is that GPUs are expensive,
Right.
right? So the more customers are able to drive up the utilization of the GPUs, it automatically delivers them the price performance advantage, right? So the supercluster is a key ingredient to driving up the utilization. If you look at how large language model training works, in many cases the utilization of GPUs is not that high,
Right.
and it's not. You would be shocked, like GPUs are like gold, but the utilization of those is not that high. Even after all the parallelism we are able to drive, it's not that high. It's not like running at 90%. It's running much lower. And that's the reason for that is that, well, one, the software, I think the degree of parallelism has to evolve. The second is essentially networking, right? So the faster the network, the more consistent the network performance is from a latency and bandwidth perspective, customers get to use the GPUs more effectively, and that essentially drives up the price performance advantage for customers. So that's one. The second is essentially our models. That we have a strategic partnership with Cohere, but really I think we've broad based, right? Like we are looking to add more models as well to our generative AI service. And there I think I talked about in the keynote as well. To me, the big thing is not just about Gen AI. To me, Gen AI is just in a very reductive way. I would say it's a different way to use data, right? It's almost some people may not agree with it, but that's the way I look at it, right? Particularly in the enterprise concept. But it's a very different way in the sense that it actually puts it's a creative spin on the data, and it's not very accurate, but that kind of goes hand in hand with creativity, right? You cannot be exactly precise and also be creative. You have to make some bets, and that's what the model does, right? That's great, but then how do you combine that with more precise data systems, data management systems, or storage systems, right? And that's actually a big part of the investment we're making. We announced generative AI agent service in beta, and to me, that's a very powerful construct particularly for enterprise customers, right? And internally, we have already been using that framework, and that's essentially how we build the app level Gen AI functionality, which is the third leg of this puzzle, right? So we have GPUs and superclusters at infra level. We have models and managed services on top, and then we have end-to-end integrated Gen AI features cleanly integrated into the apps almost seamlessly. The customers don't even see it very clearly, right? That's exactly what we want. We don't want customers to notice it. It should just be there.
Right.
Exactly. So that's essentially how I think about
Gen. Yeah. So you were also mentioning that GPU is not something a graphic processor unit which we used to call that has changed a lot. So means you talked about the investment for the generative AI. So can you share something about like healthcare or the manufacturing? They have different requirement of solutions in terms of generative AI also. So is there customization happens at your end, or it's the customer's part to do the customization? You have that solution as a bundle or anything? You can shed light on that.
Yeah, so I think here's the really good part about generative AI, particularly the foundational models, right? The large foundational models. The main advantage of the models is that to a large extent, it actually just works, right? It's unlike many other types of machine learning algorithms where you actually need to have domain-specific training, a lot of domain-specific training, right? In the absence of that type of models, you'll have to do it. But I think with generative AI, that is one of the big advantages. You can actually have a big JS model that brings a swath of capabilities immediately, right? But then usually what happens is you do need to, do some fine tuning, as we call it. Those fine tunings are, I think in the last 1 year, I would say has evolved quite a bit as well. It's actually become a lot more efficient now. You can only for fine tuning with hundreds of sample data is actually all that you need. And you can the fine tuning algorithms these days can replace parts of some layers and some weights of some layers in the model as opposed to the entire model. And that is very, very powerful because you can actually make very effective inferencing stack when you actually replace just a few models, right? So I think and then in terms of the industry specifics, we do have fine tuning in the context of industries.
Okay.
Right. That generally you do need to do. But again, it's not as much as training a base model using exactly that industry. But you essentially have a foundational model that's generic, but then you can essentially tune it for the industry. It's I'm not going to rule out doing per customer specific models, but generally I don't think we have seen a big requirement for that at the app level customers, right? At OCI level customers we do, right? We do, as part of OCI generative AI service, we do allow customers to fine tune their models using their own data, right? And apply a private cluster or whatever. But at apps level is less so. But I wouldn't say it's completely ruled out. We'll have to see how that evolves. But I think the main thing at app level at a use case level, automatically becomes a little customized in the context of using Gen AI in combination with some data management system. And the data management system is obviously for a customer, right? Let's say in medical field, one hospital will have a bunch of records, a different hospital might have a different set of records. The Gen AI may actually be the same, but then when it actually uses the model for the next level as part of a retrieval augmented generation, then it actually becomes customized from an end user perspective, right? So that's kind of how I see things evolve.
Obviously, means it cannot be can't be a 100% customized things which you can sell to the smaller customers. But going forward, the larger enterprises, if they have the certain kind of customization required in the generative AI solutions, where you can help also that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think from a OCI perspective, we absolutely want to allow customers to fine tune. In fact, some of our customers, they actually build foundational models on top of us.
Okay.
Their job is to actually build foundational models, right? Mosaic ML, Reka.ai, those are some of the examples that are public, where they actually use our very large GPU cluster to train their models. So that's totally possible. But usually, when customers do it, that's because that's their primary job, right? And not because of they run a healthcare, right? When you run a healthcare, you usually want to be a customer of one such model, take it and then do fine tuning. Right. That
got it. So in the system itself, there is a certain, there is a different department. According to that, there is a requirement of different set of solutions.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. Sir, do you think that generative AI, because you are already launching generative AI solutions and everything, so do you think that this has added your revenue as well as we can say OCI solution consumption has gone up? Do you think so?
We certainly have OCI Gen AI customers, so obviously it's added to the revenue and whatnot. I don't think we publicly split the numbers per se, so I cannot comment on that.
But the trend has been.
Oh yeah, the trend is definitely it's certainly part of our growth story.
Right. So
and that I think is public information.
Right. That's true. So you are already a market leader in OCI or cloud solutions, and also, what has been the reason that you have been the number one player, and what all assurance you are giving to your existing customers to keep on maintaining such kind of offerings or maintain the leadership position? So what is your take on that?
Look, I think we need to help solve customers' hard problems, not just fancy problems, but hard problems, and that's what we are here for, right? Sorry, give me a second. So our distributed cloud strategy, for example, is exactly that, right? Like it's much easier not to do it, right? Because that's kind of the general public cloud strategy. But it's hard to do the distributed cloud strategy, but that's exactly what we want to do because we know that solves customer problems. And I think that we need to keep the pace of innovation going, right? Gen AI is a good example where keeping the pace of innovation, but it applies to broadly to our portfolio. Like we need to continue to launch services, add functionality, and that's exactly what we've been doing, right? Like we recently launched an Oracle database for Postgres. We are obviously a database company. We have our Oracle database service, which is a big one, but that's not stopping us from reacting to customers' needs to have other types of database in OCI. So that's why we launched the Postgres service, right? And we continue to innovate. We launched the Redis service recently, and so on and so forth. So we're not going to stop. That's going to continue to,
That's true.
And I think, Gen AI space, it is a challenge because I think the rate of innovation is so high, but at the same time, customers want stability, right? So finding the right balance and essentially focusing on stability in some cases, but then, rapid iterations in other cases, and figuring out how to prioritize what I think is a huge part of the value that we bring to the table.
Obviously, means the kind of strength you're having, you'll be adding more value to the solutions which you're bringing in future. I'll just, because we are running out of time, so I'll have to conclude this discussion with one comment. Look, unifying is what we see a lot of brands are doing in terms of solutions. So what are Oracle's contribution in unifying all these smaller solutions in one platform? How do you see this kind of contribution or the work is going on?
We actually see this more than a solution. We actually see it as a product. I think that's the big difference, right? So like we don't see, the solutions are great. There's nothing wrong with solutions, right? But I think we are at a point where we need to address this in a systematic, cohesive fashion as a first-class product, and that's essentially the unified cloud strategy, if you will, right? So, I think what we find is that when we actually think about it from a wholesale company level strategy perspective, we can usually do a lot better than designing and implementing them independently and then solutioning something together, if you will,
Right.
right? So I think there's a fundamental difference in how we look at it. It's not solution, it's a product.
That's great. So just leave one comment for the CTOs, because you interact uh, these days with a lot of CTOs and they have certain set of challenges. So what is, as per you, the one top priority or the challenges for them which you see and you discuss on a regular basis with your CTO friends?
Experiment
Okay.
as fast as you're comfortable.
Okay.
Right. I think that's the big one. I think there are a variety of customers of Oracle, particularly OCI. We have enterprise customers who have various levels of risk averseness. We also have more of a tech company or maybe smaller company, and they have less risk, and they're willing to take risk and move forward fast. Um, we respect both. We want to cater to both. We don't want to say, hey, you need to move fast, or
Right.
they need to pick the pace that they're comfortable with. But at the same time, we are at a point in technology evolution where I think there's going to be a rapid clip of progress, and I think it's important to keep up, right? So I think the one advice would be experiment as fast as possible, but then within your comfort level.
That's great. So it's really good to know about the things what you're doing for the Indian market and Indian customers, and obviously the experiment what you're saying will help the CTOs to take a risk and move forward in the digital journey.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.